Salutations, people of the internet. Matt here from Hydro Gaming, and welcome to episode 13 in Knightwatch: A Journey, a series where we as a community create our very own video game using the power of the Unreal Engine. In the last episode, we finalized our map layout for our first town in the game, Edenvale, and today we're actually going to begin working on the town in-engine. But before we get started, I've been getting a lot of requests to make the intros a little bit shorter and jump straight into the engine instead of just having you stare at my face for the first 5 minutes of every video. So, with that out of the way, let's jump right in. So here we are back to the map of our first town, Edenvale. In the last episode we worked on designing the general layout of Edenvale. Today, we're going to use that layout to guide the creation process and make our ideas reality. Virtual reality.
Give me that.
And a quick side note. This video, along with any future Knightwatch Devlog videos, will now have chapters so you can easily jump around to whatever part of the video you want to see. I began by importing a custom height map from World Engine. It's a great piece of software for generating realistic lifelike landscapes in games, and in my opinion, you end up with a much better looking level than if you just use Unreal Engine's in-house landscape editor. So here, you can see how the landscape looked after I imported my custom height map file. It's a little jagged, but we can fix that using the smoothing tool in Unreal Engine 4. After smoothing out the landscape to make it relatively walkable, I was able to test play the map to get a sense of scale for the world. Just a spitball guess, I'd say the map is about the size of the map of Skyrim. You'll see a bird's eye view of the map in the next segment to get an idea of how big the map really is. With the landscape in-game, I needed to add what is called a landscape material to the world. A landscape material is basically a repeating image that gets painted over the surface of the world to give it the appearance of different ground types like grass, mud, snow, rock, etc. So the way it works is that a landscape material is kind of like a paint palette, with each paint glob representing a different surface, and I can take from each of these surface types and paint them wherever I want to make fields, paths, basically any sort of landscape you would see in an open world game. Now, I could have made my own material from scratch, but Unreal Sensei, his channel is linked in the description below, has a free template material that you just have to add your own textures to without getting into any of the tedious coding process. So after bastardizing his wonderful material, we were able to paint up our landscape and make it look just a little bit nicer with some grass, rocks, and all the other things you'd expect to see when you're out and about in the world. And with our custom material in the engine, I was able to start painting down the basic layout for Edenvale that I created in episode 12. So in the last episode, I got some very helpful advice from some viewers on the channel. I think the most important piece of advice was that I should provide more meaningful commentary to go with the creation process, rather than just showing a supercut of what went into the creation process. I couldn't agree more. And credit where credit is due, thanks for the feedback you guys, I really appreciate it, as it goes a long way towards improving the video quality on the channel. Unfortunately, I'm too illiterate to pronounce either of your usernames, but I am grateful for the feedback nonetheless, and I thought you guys deserved a shout out, so thank you. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to go through this section by explaining my thought process a bit when I was creating Edenvale, and maybe it'll help some aspiring creators out there in the audience. So, whenever I'm designing an area in a game, I always begin by thinking about what the characters have to accomplish, and what shops or services would be most helpful to do that. For example, if your game is about crafting, then a Fletcher or a blacksmith should be accessible in your town. If your game is about slaying the biggest monsters, then an armor or weaponsmith may be of use. It's a good idea to try to tailor your towns to fit what the objective of your game is. My game is kind of a mix of everything, thus my towns have a wide variety of places the character can visit to suit their playstyle. As for location, made hub towns like Edenvale, this is especially important if you're designing the first town your character will visit, should have locations to complement a little bit of every aspect of the game, mainly to teach players the basics. For example, the town is in a location surrounded by lots of natural resources like trees for woodcutting, a fishing hub for fishing, and the mountains for mining. In addition, there are merchants, a tavern to grab quests or listen in on local rumors, and lots of other useful places. Think Lumbridge from RuneScape. For this section, I'm going to do a walkthrough of the town accompanied by commentary to fill you in on Edenvale's background and lore. Keep in mind that the town is far from finished and will continue being developed as time goes on. So, as you can see, The layout of the town is exactly the same as what I had envisioned when I was creating the layout. One of the things I really wanted to focus on was world building through what the player sees around them rather than what they're told. You'll see what I mean as the section continues. Now, Edenvale is a coastal town with most of its inhabitants working at the local fishery, the wood mill, or in the mines just up in the mountain outside of town. One of the first things you'll notice is that all of the buildings in town are raised off the ground. Being a coastal town, floods aren't uncommon. This being the case, the townsfolk have taken precautions to ensure the safety of their homes and belongings in the event of a flood. Edenvale isn't known for rich inhabitants, so its people have to work hard for what they have, and they'll do what they have to in order to protect it. Moving on through the town, you'll notice trading caravans meeting near the major fishing ports. Along the shoreline, fishermen dock their vessels and set up shop to sell their catches. These ports attract folks from all over, and other traders are quick to take advantage of the crowds. Besides fish salesmen, you'll find woodsmen, miners, caravan traders, and plenty of other vendors looking to sell their treasures. Across the docks, the player can find the Eden Company Mill. The mill is one of the first places the player will visit following the introduction section of the game during their initial tour of Edenvale, before heading back up the mountain. Now, if you want to revisit the story, or hear it for the first time, check out episode 1 to catch up on the lore. Here the player can learn about the woodcutting and firemaking skills from a local trainer. If you know me, you know that I'm a sucker for grinding medieval games, and RuneScape is definitely up there as one of my favorites. That's why I want to base a lot of the skills in Knightwatch on the ones seen in RuneScape. Next to the mill is the Eden Company fishing hub. Boats from all over come back from the sea to dock here and sell their catches to the locals. The booming fishing industry commands most of the town's economy and has done much to bolster the growth of the small community into a thriving village. On the shoreline, the player will also come across the blacksmith, quite possibly the most important location at the beginning of any adventurer's journey. Through careful fostering of a partnership with the Eden Company, the town's blacksmith has established a direct supply line to and from the Eden Company mine just up the mountain, sending mining tools such as pickaxes and helmets up the mountain with raw materials coming back into town. In addition to these amenities, there's also a tavern at the foot of the mountain just outside of town. This tavern serves as a place of rest for weary travelers, but is most often frequented by miners from up the mountain, and has been dubbed Miner's Respite by the townsfolk. After years of being referred to by the name, the owner changed the name to Miner's Respite. Most people in town don't even know the original name of the tavern. Right around the corner is the foot of one of this land's many mountains. This mountain in particular houses the Eden Company mine and the mysterious lab from the opening section of the game. Just across from the blacksmith, the player can find the alchemist. This is where they can purchase or create their own potions to help them in their adventures throughout the world. Further on into the unfinished parts of town are other areas like the Merchant Guild, the Healer, and the main fishery building, with the barracks on the other side of town adjacent to the town hall. We don't need to go there for now, there's not much to see. Now, you'll notice most of the buildings in town are made from stone or wood, and the fishing port is the main source of income for most of the townsfolk. This being the case, you can imagine how much power the Eden Company holds over the town of Edenvale. Luckily, they haven't abused their power, and most of the citizens actually see them as a benevolent force that has created sustainable growth and a bright future for the village. As the player first enters the town, one of the first things you'll notice are the green and white banners scattered on the town hall and throughout the village. These are the family colors of the Eden family, the descendants of those who founded the village after what is known as the Great Collapse. They also, as you may have guessed, founded the Eden Company that is responsible for the 3 major industries in the town of Edenvale. They act in a way similar to the way a Jarl and their staff did in Skyrim, governing their individual holds and towns, except in this case, they're not elected officials, rather they created the town, so naturally they put themselves in charge. Now you may remember the lab we talked about in episode 1 where we discussed game lore and the opening of the game. Well, the Eden family may know a little bit more about the mysterious lab than they let on. Upon returning to the lab, amongst other symbols of the old gods, the player discovers this symbol throughout the rune facility. Exactly how or if the symbol is related to the Eden family we see today is a story for another time. And with that little cliffhanger, our first in-game tour through the town of Edenvale has come to an end. As I continue to build the town, we'll revisit the location to tour parts of the village that didn't make it into this episode. Be sure to expect tours of this and other towns, as well as areas across the continent, which we have yet to name, in future episodes of Knightwatch: A Journey. Next episode, I think it's time we return to the developer room to take a look at what gameplay mechanics I've been working on behind the scenes as well. But before we go, it's time for everybody's favorite segment, Checking In with Also Matt. Let's roll.
Oh,
Okay, so we've got some like coffee beans, I guess. Is this video sponsored? Is this a sponsor? Wait, what the f***? Was that your intro? What's with the coffee beans? It doesn't even make any f***ing sense. Hey there, Matt. So today we have something super special to show you. We finally started our—
Fuck you! You cut me out of the last episode, you dick!